What's up everyone, and welcome back to the comms channel. In our previous video, we went over the license-free Motorola radios that have texting, GPS location sharing, and remote radio control. For today's video, we're looking at the next level up from these radios and checking out the BTECH GMRS-PRO. So join me and let's have a look.
US Air Force on guard, aircraft 4 miles west of Bainbridge Airport.
Okay, I'll be back in 6 seconds.
We're approaching a restricted area. Restricted area is 1 mile west.
If you haven't seen the Motorola video, I'll link to it in the video description below. As we mentioned in that video, there are benefits to going with GMRS radios over FRS radios, but a license does need to be purchased for them. On the plus side though, it used to cost $70, but now it's only $35 and there's no test required. You just pay the FCC the $35 and they'll issue you a call sign that's good for the entire household for 10 years. So let's jump right into checking out the BTECH GMRS-PRO. The GMRS-PRO is more than your average GMRS radio. Similar to the Motorola FRS radios we reviewed, the GMRS-PRO allows you to text back and forth, share GPS locations with others, control the radio from your phone using their app, and even use your phone as a microphone and speaker. This also has the NOAA weather channels and alerting as well. Now, there are some things that set this radio apart from the Motorola FRS radios. This radio has its own built-in GPS, so it doesn't need to be paired to a phone for location sharing. It also has the ability to send messages directly from the radio itself, but with the radio not having a full keypad to allow for T9 texting, writing out messages is very painful directly from the radio itself since you have to use the up and down pad to scroll through the characters to select them one at a time. It'll do in a pinch, but definitely recommend being paired to a phone for texting on a regular basis. Still nice to have this ability directly from the radio though. The GMRS-PRO is also able to receive a wide range of frequencies from 137 through 174 MHz to 400 through 520 MHz. Now, while you can't transmit outside of the GMRS frequencies, you can at least listen into other radio services like ham radio, MURS, Marine Band, Railroad, Police Fire, and emergency services if you're in an area that hasn't gone digital yet. If you remember in the previous video, FRS is limited to 2 watts of power, and since this is a GMRS radio, it outputs 5 watts like most other handheld GMRS radios. You may also remember in the previous video where we mentioned that unlike FRS, GMRS radios are allowed to have removable antennas. There is one exception to that, however. For some reason, the FCC does not allow this on GMRS radios that have the ability to transmit data. So because of this, the antenna is not removable on the GMRS-PRO, unfortunately. One feature I can see to help overcome this is the ability to use your phone as a speaker and microphone, like you can with the Motorola radios, and then just string the radio up high in a tree and talk through your phone if you're in a situation where you need more range. That brings up another feature of this radio, which is the audio relay option, which turns the radio into a simplex repeater. What this does is has the radio record an incoming transmission and then play it back when the transmission is over. Testing 1 2 3 3 2 1.
Testing 1 2 3 3 2 1.
It is a bit annoying having to listen to yourself after each transmission, but it's a helpful feature to have if needed. You could set the radio in this mode, string it up in a tree in a good location, and potentially significantly extend the range of communications or extend communications over a mountain to connect users that would otherwise be blocked by the terrain. For those of you looking for something rugged and completely waterproof, this one is a good choice as it has an IP67 rating, which means it can be submerged a little over 3 feet underwater for 30 minutes without harming the radio. I've had this radio out in the elements a number of times now, and have even given it the usual drop it in a creek test, and the radio continues working fine. Now let's go ahead and take a look at the app and some features, including something interesting we discovered. Now this app isn't as polished or intuitive as the one used by the Motorola radios we previously reviewed, but Motorola is a much bigger company, of course. If you've watched our previous videos on the VGC VRN76, you'll notice that the app for the GMRS-PRO is very similar. Many of these same menus and features are here, but there are some slight differences to this app since it's tailored for use on GMRS instead of ham radio. For example, things like SSTV aren't allowed on GMRS, so the option to send pictures isn't available on this app. Also, unlike ham radio and packet radio, the FCC has a limit on how often you can transmit data, which is every 30 seconds. The app will prevent you from transmitting until 30 seconds has passed since the last data transmission was sent. This isn't really a big deal though, as you likely wouldn't want to send your position more frequently than that, and the time will usually be spent typing up your message when texting back and forth. A lot of the other features are still there though, things like sending and receiving positions, sending Morse code, DTMF tones, and of course using the phone as a speaker and mic to allow you to do things like operate the radio while it's strung up high in a tree, like the VGC and Motorola radios I reviewed previously. Also, as mentioned earlier, the GMRS-PRO is a wide range of frequencies that it can receive from. This means that you can program additional groups to receive things in these frequency ranges. I was curious, so I programmed in a ham radio frequency and tried sending APRS packets, and it turns out that the GMRS-PRO is capable of receiving APRS packets, even on the radio itself with it disconnected from the phone. So if you have one or plan on getting one, it's worth programming in the APRS frequency, which is 144.390. Now there is one quirk that should be mentioned when programming additional groups. If we go into the channel and groups menu by tapping on the hamburger menu on the top left, then the gear cog on the top right, and select channels and groups, you'll notice that there are no current groups in here, including the default GMRS frequencies. We want to make sure that we import these in here before we program another group. To do that, just select Import, and we'll see the current default GMRS frequencies. We just need to give it a title, and we'll just go with GMRS for that. Then we can go and hit Save. Now when it asks about syncing to the device, we can hit No for that. And we now have the default GMRS frequencies here. Now let's go ahead and create a new group for receiving. Tap on New on the top right, and let's give it a title. I'm just going to go with RX for this one since it'll be for receiving. But name it whatever makes sense for your situation. Now let's tap on row 1 to program something in there. Let's put in the APRS frequency here and name this one APRS. Then tap on Freak, and we'll put in 144.390 and hit OK. Now we can hit Save to save it. Now let's say that there's a ham radio repeater in the area we're interested in monitoring, and let's go ahead and put that into row 2. So go and give it a title, and one thing to note is that the title does have a limit of 8 characters, so be sure to keep that in mind. Then go ahead and put in the frequency and hit OK, and then save. Go ahead and follow this same process for any additional, and when finished we can hit the save on the top right. When it asks about syncing, hit No here again. Now you'll see we have 2 channel groups saved here. So if we hit back a few times to get to the screen with all the channels, you'll see we have this map looking icon on the top towards the middle here. If we select that, we can pick which channel group to load, so let's select our newly created RX group. Now you'll likely receive a notice that the frequencies are outside of the supported range. This just means they're outside of the range that you can transmit on, since we programmed some non-GMRS frequencies in there. But we can still receive these just fine. Now on to some interesting discoveries. If you watched our review on the VGC VRN76 and similar radios, you may remember that in addition to being APRS capable, it has BSS, which is their own digital packet radio format similar to APRS. Since these radios are from the same manufacturer, I was curious, and it turns out that the GMRS-PRO uses BSS for sending positions and text messages. That means that since the VRN76 is technically capable of transmitting on GMRS frequencies, the radios are actually interoperable for data transmissions. Now, the FCC does have rules on using radios that aren't made for GMRS on GMRS frequencies, but they have no real way of knowing what type of radio is being used on a particular frequency. But it's just something to be aware of. Now, as mentioned earlier, there is a limit placed by the FCC on how often data transmissions can be sent by a GMRS radio. Since the VRN76 is a ham radio, this limitation isn't present. So transmitting more frequently than every 30 seconds could be a potential indicator that you're not using an approved GMRS radio on GMRS frequencies, and something to be mindful of. Now, if there's an emergency situation where radio is the only means of communications, this won't matter though. Now, we did a video on using ham radios during emergencies that you may want to check out if you haven't seen it yet. A link to this will be in the video description. But that'll do it for this video on this very feature-rich GMRS radio, which I would say is the most advanced GMRS radio you can buy. And with it being completely waterproof, it's a great choice for those without a ham license that are looking for a rugged radio with texting, as well as sending and receiving GPS positions. If you'd like to pick one of these radios up for yourself, check the video description for our affiliate link to it. Hope you found this video useful, and if you did, please be sure to give the video a thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't already so you won't miss out on any future content. Thank you all and have a good one.